The Swedish round at Linköping is not particularly my favourite place, so a bit of apprehension that we went there.
Hockey dockey.
Distribution is all wrong now.
Yeah. For sure, yeah.
Like most meetings, the first thing which has to be done is scrutineering. At Linköping, it's a very big classic meeting. A lot of the Nordic riders turn up with all sorts of wonderful machines. Of course, everybody has to get through scrutineering first. The Swedish idea of scrutineering is very much like it is in British clubman's, sort of old style. Really relaxed, very friendly. Evert van der Beek's beautiful Ducati. It's got the wrong number on, should have number 2 on, I've been telling it for years. So the starting procedure of the bikes is basically get them going first thing in the morning, get all the oils and everything all nice and lubed up. And sometimes there can be a bit of a bugger to get going. Laws never seems to get his going very well. Usually reverts to his girlfriend getting it fired up in the end. They do say it's a woman's touch, and I think in this case Mark totally agrees. Mick's very proud of his bike, Mick James. It's a Palmy GRC BMW engine. Stefan, of course, coming across see if he can get a ride in it next year. I think there might be a subplot there. Always smooth, isn't he? All these 4 coffees are just for Chris. He's a caffeine addict, pretty tricky on a paper plate to carry 4. For the first on-time practice it was slightly damp, so it was a bit of a decision as which tyres to go out on. Most people went for slicks because the sun was out, and even though there were some lying puddles, it was dry enough for slicks. And out on track for the first session. This is on time, so everyone's still getting into the flow of it. Trying to conserve engine life with the 450 and 46 is important, so I didn't spend that long out on track before coming in and just making sure things were fine.
Is there a right and a wrong way? Positive and a negative on that?
Yeah, next time it's right. Do you feel happier about the way the thing works?
Chris is a right terrier, straight in there, pulls the bike to pieces, checking everything out. Quite important because things do fall off them, and with the vibration and so on, there's cracks appear and stuff, so you have to keep on top of it.
Yeah,
Evert van der Beek with his long hair, who rather reminds me of the Rolling Stones. Clive Chitty loading gorgeous. Let's get ready for another 5 rounds with Mike Tyson. And once again the rain started to come down. When it rains in Sweden, it rains. really say it, yes, I could do with a sword. First on-time practice sheet was out and posted the fastest time. I was quite pleased with the way things were going so far.
We'll go around a couple of laps, yeah?
On to the first time session, and it was quite important because of the weather was being fluctuating to try and get a good time in, because no one could rely on the second qualifier being dry. Through the warm-up area and out onto track. But more or less straight away I decided to come in because there was so much traffic all just meandering round. I thought I'd let everyone get up to speed and then go back out again towards the end of the session and post a quick time towards the end. Didn't last long though, because on the out lap I managed to get it wrong coming off at the end of the back straight into a tight right and lost the front on the brakes. And the bike was a bit of a mess, so thankfully we had the 426 to jump on and do a few laps. Great things about the Supermono paddock is it's everyone's a bit of a close family sort of community, and it was very refreshing. A lot of the riders came up to see was I okay, and it's really nice. The bike wasn't talking to me though, she was deeply fed up. First thing really after a crash like this is to take off as much broken stuff as possible and check the main components, frame, forks, wheels, and then you work out from there really. All the bits which tend to snap off aren't usually a problem, it's the main core of it, the frame and the swinging arm. Here you can see the exhaust split where it's held on underneath. That was going to become a major problem later. New silencer wasn't an issue, we had a spare one of those.
The main bits still basically seem to be there now.
Yeah. So we need to know, have we got a master cylinder, a reservoir, right, to go on there. The one that we took off the old bike wasn't wrecked if it's in the box. Alright, it was okay.
Of course, checking the wheels and the wheel alignment was important.
Well, the number plate you put there.
When they put a line tape, they can always get a number. Just trying to look out the forks, it's just rough. I'd rather have a paddock. The service.
Yeah, if you just take it out there and drop it in that black thing.
Fortunately the steering damper was gone for a Burton, having pulled all the guts out of itself as it went on to full lock. Onto the crash site really. I was looking for any components which had come off the front master cylinder had gone, and we were at that time struggling to find one, so I thought I'd be able to easily find it, but the gravel was so deep and soft it was gone forever.
Point out to your wife, she doesn't have to use every inch of it,
She does, unfortunately. She is a bit low, so I do. That's a bit in the return. You'll never believe it. See, I'm not just a pretty face, Philip.
No, well, you've been around
Some would say
long enough to know something, I'm sure.
You do pick up stuff.
Phil managed to find a small rear master cylinder reservoir, so we decided to use that. Struggling to get it to bleed, always a problem. In the end, managed to do a bit of reverse bleeding.
Escape with the master cylinder and avoid having to bleed it. It would have been a long job.
Reverse bleeding is what it is.
Whenever you've crashed a bike, well, after it you've got it basically together, first thing is check that it actually runs again. There's no point in not running it until just before you really need it to find out it's a non-goer. I was quite keen on having a little run round on it just to make sure that it felt the handlebars were straight and the forks weren't twisted. The only way to try that really is to actually get out and try it. The next day was second qualifying. Sunny again, so I was quite pleased, but we were using this session mainly to make sure that the bike actually worked. After such a heavy crash, it was quite important that we were going to check that other components weren't breaking or broken. So good check over after a few laps and then out to try and get a time. During the session though, the misfire had come back. It was intermittent, which was particularly irritating, so we all put our heads together trying to come up with possible solutions.
A shitload of zip ties.
Well, yeah,
Zip ties are amazing things.
I know they are, but I mean, if we can make a metal bracket.
There's some more damage that we had to repair, which we hadn't actually discovered, exhaust mounting and so on.
Material here, you can drill here.
Oh, look at this.
And reinforce it.
Plus airbox and rear subframe bolts had worked loose and one had come out.
It's still revving out. It's obviously making progress.
But it looks good on the dyno. It's actually good better than, we've made some like this bracket.
Decided to treat it to a new set of tyres. There was no support vehicle there, so we had to do our own. I swung it to action, balancing the wheels up in a very technical fashion.
I love it.
The Swedish Supermono organisation asked several of the riders to bring the bikes up to make a display to try and attract an interesting idea to get everybody's bike there, including the Elwood, which is, shall we say, a unique machine. First race, new tyres, bike checked over, bike felt quite good, so I was reasonably confident. Very important here to get a good start and not let Mark or anybody get away. Line Marshall trying to take off with his red flags was failing miserably.
What about that last goal,
And after the race, a nice cool shower because the temperature now is really starting to get warm.
Right, I think start with careful coverage examination.
But like in practice, the misfire hadn't gone away after all we'd done to it. Our heads came together to try and come up with some sort of a solution. Even I managed to finish second and limp home in second place, just beating Hank From in third. But I was quite pleased with posting the best time, a time which actually wasn't beaten for the rest of the weekend. So even with a misfiring bike, I could still go reasonably quick, which was particularly disappointing because I felt I could potentially have won the race, something I needed to do this weekend. The great spirit at this event, and that's really what makes it for me, is the atmosphere which it's generated. This is the prize giving.
And in second place, Mike Edwards, Great Britain. And on third place, Henk from Holland.
And this is Mark, me and Henk getting our prizes. Henk from didn't really need the box to be the same height as Mark and I. He's about 9'6", I think. The organisers allowed people who'd had a problem on the first day to do 2 laps just to make sure the bikes were functioning. So I managed to sneak out and do a couple of laps. And the misfire was not overly apparent. It was in the background, and it was in a real dilemma as to what to do.
Well, it's a case of do we risk it? Or how on 126? Let's struggle.
Sure, it's a 426 incline for Bex, is it?
Well, let us try changing a couple of parts. Let's see what we've got in the box. See what we can change. What I'm going to do.
Try putting another plug in it.
Try putting another plug in it, yeah, anything we can. It's a brand new
That's
plug.
a new plug.
So what, yeah.
Well, change this coil and put the other coil on.
However, we did notice that the front downpipe had split, and an idea was put forward that this may be causing, it certainly wasn't good and looked like it might develop into a much larger split, so it had to be rectified, but it may have been causing this misfire anyway. So one of the things, it's nice to always find something, and in this case we actually found something.
Okay. This is slightly longer. Okay. Very slightly longer by about that much.
Team lead to find looking very smart, ready to go. Phil and Chris looking very professional and quite dapper. About a 5 or 10 minute delay due to an incident out on the track before we got out, so we were held in the warm-up area. It was so warm it wasn't a big issue anyway, so the tyres were kept nice and warm. Desperate to get a good start, and thankfully this time I led into the first corner.
Well, each yours worse than mine. I thought, I'll follow you. It might not get any worse. Oh, yours might get worse. I was just, I had a look behind. The third place was sort of.
I couldn't quite tell if we were up to back markers before I really started playing the same.
Oh, right.
Apparently Hank said they were about 1.5 seconds back, which wasn't.
No, Stefan was there.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
misfire again? We have a misfire. We know what we got our problem is, but I mean I don't know what yours is. But we know.
Is it a fuel problem?
If you do find out what our problem is, you let us know. Won't you?
Bigger main jet. We're too lean.
We got a big main jet, but
Once again the misfire had come back, but whilst I was following Mark, grimly trying to hang on, his was misfiring a little as well, so it was a case of whose was going to finish first. Tree, a Swedish competitor we've got quite friendly with on the internet, and he'd had a problem. His carburettor fell off during the race, something which periodically does happen.
You guys were going very fast there.
I misfired very hard.
I could hear it. Yeah. Too bad.
Yes. I thought I was going to get away, but it didn't happen.
what jet have you got in there then?
Pardon?
Sharing the same engine as us, Phil was quite intrigued to find out what main jet and so on he was running.
Kaya, 39, but it's bored out to 40.
That's evidence.
I also had a bit of contact with the rider at the back marker as I was trying to break the toe between Mark and I, and the tyre mark on the fairing shows the evidence of this. Anyway, that was race 2. It was nice to see Stefan Minus on the third place. He just pipped Henk from, who had clutch problems on the last lap. Anyway, the race result was 2 seconds for me, 2 wins for Mark. Not perfect, but better than nothing.